Hello and welcome to summer. It's July in a year gardening, and what a fun packed show we've got for you this month. As I said in the last show, we're going to enjoy creating some new honeysuckle plants, and I'm going to be lifting the section that I layered last year, and I'll explain about that as well. I've been working rather hard on the extension to the veg growing area. We got the first of the raised beds built, and I'll show you how that's gone as well. We've got a rather interesting section on weeds, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy. And I'm going to share the development of the flower garden. Also show you how the front garden is coming on 1 year on from the big redevelopment. So lots of things to do, lots of things to talk about. So let's start by just looking at the extension to the vegetable garden. Well, I've just completed the first of the new raised beds for the extended vegetable garden. And what I've done is just built out of pallets, lined with an old carpet as a weed suppressing membrane, then wrapped in a weed membrane to darken it out so we don't get any weed growth from around the edges. All I've got to do now is clad it, and I think we'll get some sweet corn growing in here. Weeds, something that we all need to control from time to time. Now, during the early part of the year when our perennial weeds start growing, probably all we need is a hoe just to lift the roots on a dry day and let them keel over in the sun, so to speak. But there are other times when we have real problem weeds. So we need to know what we're dealing with. So the first thing we really do need to know is what sort of soil we have. And we've got a soil here which is just slightly acidic, just slightly over neutral. And I test that by using one of these. Now this is just a pH meter into the soil to around about the depth of my fingers here. And that will then give you a reading of the acidity of your soil. If you've got a neutral or an alkaline soil, one of the best things for getting rid of weeds you find in your kitchen, and that is white vinegar or distilled vinegar. Now what I do with that is I put it into a little spray bottle and I mix just a teaspoonful of washing up liquid in there, which helps the vinegar stick to the leaves of the weed. I also have the bottle very clearly marked as acetic acid. I don't want to be spraying my best dahlias or my geraniums with this stuff because they're not going to like it. But what we'll do is we'll show you how we treat some of those. Now also, sometimes we get weeds growing in our driveways, our paths and our patios. You can use the acetic acid, but you can also use this stuff, table salt. Sodium chloride, wonderful stuff, and you just pile it up around the weed, leave it for a few days, and your weed's dead. So that's a very, very useful one. Another little tool that I do use in my patio is I've got a weed burner, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes as well. So let's go down the back, put some acetic acid onto some plants, then we'll go up to the path and we'll use the salt, and finally we'll use the weed burner. Just one thing before I do go off and do this. Now, I know that Gary, you have a problem with mare's tails. This stuff, the white vinegar, is really good for getting rid of those. So once we've established the soil type, we know how we're going to treat the weeds. So if you've got a small area, you can just spray straight on. If you've got a large area of weeds, you need to distress the plants. So take a lawnmower to them or a strimmer, cut them, distress them. They're going to start putting out new shoots, and those young new shoots are the ones that we can treat. What I am going to do is I'm going to use my white vinegar solution just to spray onto these plants here, because there is a lot of leaf here And the more leaf you can get it to stick to, the more likely the plant is going to be killed. I'm just experimenting on these ones because I know that I can dig the soil here quite easily and remove the plants. We'll just carry on down here just a little bit. Well, here we are, the little pathway beside the summer house, and we've got prime culprit here, dandelion, coming up through the stones here. All you need is your salt. Just pile it up. And there we are. That'll be dead in a couple of days. Well, if the area that you're working in is safe, then you can use one of these little beasties, which is a weed burner. Runs on a mixture of propane and butane, and you can burn the roots. You need to make sure the area is safe, that you haven't got a wooden fence or anything like that, but then you can just hold this around about 6 inches away from the weed, and the heat will go down and eventually destroy the weeds. Lovely. One final word on weeds, and the best way to get rid of the weeds is hard work. Take a garden fork, don't use a spade, you can cut the roots and then you can still leave the weed in the ground, but if you use a garden fork, lift the weed, lift the surrounding fibrous roots, everything that you can get out of the ground will give you a much better chance of suppressing your weeds. So I hope you found this a little bit useful. As I say, I am an organic gardener and I don't use any chemicals. So the chemicals that I'm using here are very, very useful. But I was just going to say there's one other use for acetic acid, or white vinegar. Rodents don't like the smell. So you can always soak some pieces of cloth if you've got vermin coming into your garden, and put that near the entrance to where they're coming in, and they won't come anymore. Just a little bonus. Well, the plants may have come out rather late this year, but I'm very, very pleased with the clematis and the wonderful display that that is putting on this year. So normally I'll get around about a dozen flowers if I'm lucky, but this year we've got over 20, and I think we'll get a second show this year as well. Well, I'm just down by the rose border now, and the roses have started coming out, the irises are out, and the flowers are really starting to take shape. Loving the colours and the scents in this garden today. Well, here we are at the mound, the new border, and we've planted out some of our perennials, and we're starting to get some nice colour coming in here, so everything is really taking shape rather well in this border as well. Well, finally in this little section, you may remember when we planted the mini orchard, and now we have got all of those lovely seeds that we put in coming through, and they're going to give us a vibrant display in the summer. Well, welcome to the front garden today, and I'd just like to show you some of the wildflowers we've got coming through here, and to explain some of the development we've had over the last year since we redesigned this area of the garden. Well, just over 12 months ago, all we had here was a square of weedy grass and a concrete strip running along in front of the house. So the redesign was, with a little bit of a nod to the formal gardens, to take the grass into a circle, and using a little inspiration from an old toy that I used to have, which was a memory game. It was a circle with 4 little coloured chevrons inside, which you had to remember and press them in order. We've got 4 little beds running around here, which I've put wildflower seeds into last year, and they've reseeded and come through nicely. So we'll just take a look at those now. At the moment we've just got a nice selection of daisies here, and it looks like we've got a marigold coming through here, and all in all it's a very, very pleasant sight to see these flower heads dancing around in the breeze. On the far side, just on the border with our neighbours, I've just planted 1,000 wildflower seeds in there, which is going to look absolutely stunning later this year. Another area of the garden that I planted up is this perennial border here. You can't see at the moment, but over the back we've got a couple of Pyrrhus, a Cuba, and they're going to grow through and form a nice backdrop to this lovely perennial border. Again, we've got things like cornflowers which are coming through in here, and then we've got echinopsis over the back, so this is really taking shape, and this is only now in its first year, so looking really, really lovely. And this section of the border is more, again, of the wilder flowers, a little bit less character, no formality, just some really lovely colour, and these just move around in the breeze. And over the back here we've got a Heliopsis, which gives us beautiful, tall, sunflower-like flowers later on in the year. And this section is my pink border. Lovely flowers, we've got a peony, nice rose, and there's a buddleia behind, and all of this will give us great colour going forward through the year. The great thing about having a lovely, wild and beautiful front garden, just touched with a little formality, is it's different, and people stop and talk to you as they're coming past. It's a real conversation starter, and I've met a lot of new people just whilst working in the front garden, which is absolutely fantastic. The last thing that I did in this section of garden was to cover the rather ugly black metal rails with a small bit of trellis, and then to start planting some hedging and some climbing plants around that in order to give us a nice green aspect to the front of the house when we're coming in and out of the front door, and the whole thing just lends to a nice natural atmosphere. What I have got is I've got a couple of pots that I've planted up, and I've also sown some wildflower seeds in those, and they'll be coming down onto the doorstep later in the year just to blend in with the whole theme of the front garden. And I hope you'll agree with me, this is just something different, but something fun to try out yourselves. Well, last year I took one of the growths of this honeysuckle and layered it down into the ground, and that is now growing nicely here. So what I intend to do is to cut that from the main plant now, and then I'm going to lift this from the ground, and we'll see how many plants we can make from this. Let's see what we've got. Nice bit of root underneath here. There's the root. Just brush that off there, and we've got a little bit of root on that one there, but we've got 3 nice strong plants. So let's transfer those into pots now. Well, I've collected myself some old pots, and what I do, if we have plastic pots, keep using them until they're of no purpose anymore, and it's a good way of saving plastic. So I've collected 3 decent sized pots from the bottom of the garden, and here we have the plants that we've just dug up. Now I've noticed on here that there are actually more roots than I thought. There are actually 2 here, but one of them hasn't got a growth. So I'm actually going to put those in together. So I'm going to take my secateurs and divide this, and that will give me my first plant to put in the ground. So we've got some lovely, lovely fibrous roots on here, and we're going to pot those up now. But what I have in my bucket is a mixture of soil, compost and some coir, and just keep that stirred. So it's still a little bit on the damp side from where the coir, which came in blocks, was expanded, but it's a warm day and it has dried out considerably. So these are still going to need a good water later on. So I won't completely fill that pot, and we'll take our plant and we're going to place that nicely inside here. Don't want the roots to all get crushed, so we're going to just lay those inside, and I'm just going to take a little piece of this off of here. Then we will firm that down ever so slightly. I'm not going to make it too compressed in the ground, so that the top of that root is now around about a centimetre below the top of the pot. We'll then take some more of our compost mix, and we're just going to cover slightly the branch that is holding the new growth. So that's the woody bit buried into the soil, and we'll plant that one there. Now we'll take this pot here, and again I'm going to pop the compost mixture inside, leaving myself enough room to move that around. Now we've got one tall growth here. What I'm going to do, this may seem really, really cruel, I'm going to take this down so there are only just a couple of leaves on there. Again, make a nice deep hole in there for the roots so they're not squashed up, and cover up the original woody part of the plant, and then just fill that around just up to the first leaves. That's all we're doing. That one there. And finally, with this section here, as you can see, I've got root on this one here, but there is no root on this one, but I'm going to keep that together. But again, I'm going to reduce that in height, because I believe that this second section here will root as well. So we've cut that back, and again get some of this compost mix into the pot. Nice deep hole for the roots. Place that inside the pot, and again the woody section is just going to be sitting on top of this compost in the pot, and then I'm going to fill over the top with some fresh, again just up to those first leaves. Now what I need to do is to get these watered, keep them in a warm but not too warm place, so I'll probably put them on the patio. Keep an eye on them, make sure they don't dry out for the next few weeks. And we've got our new honeysuckle plants. Well, that brings me to the end of the July show for a year gardening. And I hope you've enjoyed what we've done today. I particularly like the making of the cuttings for the honeysuckles, because they're going to be some lovely plants for next year. Now, I've just returned with my wife from a lovely week away in Hastings, lovely old seaside town, and we've had a lovely time. And whilst we were there, we popped into a public house in the middle of the town, and we were amazed to find one of the most beautiful little courtyard gardens with loads of flowers and character. And the garden is owned by a lady called Ali, and we had a lovely chat, and so I'm going to be going back there in a month or so's time to do a little bit of filming in her garden, and I can share that with you. Now, at this time of year, we have to really keep our eyes open for some of the regular pests that we get rust on the leaves, we get that powdery mildew, and these things we have to deal with when they come through. So keep your eyes open. If you're growing lilies, watch out for those red beetles, devastating little blighters. Just give them a little squeeze, get rid of them. And remember their larvae, their eggs, they wrap in their own poos. They're a little brown slimy patch that you will find at the end of one of your leaves. You'll need to get rid of those as well. But the most important thing to do now we're in July is to come outside and enjoy our gardens. Although, because I've been away for a week, I've got a lot of work in tidying up to do. But let's get out, enjoy the colours, the scents, and all that hard work we put in all year round. Let's enjoy it for the next 5 or 6 weeks when we really can. Well, that really is that for this show. It just leaves me to say, stay safe, be kind to each other, happy gardening. And I do have a small glass of Cote du Rhone just to wish you well. Cheers, everybody.